Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. This is our map session, and this is where we go into a little bit more detail on the content that we're presenting you this week. And without taking any of Victoria's time, I'm going to send it right over to her. Victoria?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for day 2 of the Zero Draft. So over in the Compass, I mentioned that many writers, especially newer writers, don't even know that a zero draft exists. They think that you just have an idea for a book, you sit down and you start writing it. There are writers who do that. I, my friends, am not one of them. I have to do a lot of pre-reading. I like to do a lot of just deep research. I often say, sometimes to the chagrin of my students, that there's no such thing as writer's block. There is a such thing as writer doesn't know enough about their world to write about it. That tends to be the kind of writer that I am. If I can't sit down and work on a scene or work on a chapter, oftentimes it's because I don't know enough about that part of the world. That's where zero drafting comes in. So at its simplest, zero drafting is what happens before you're doing the actual writing of the scenes, the sequels, compiling those into chapters. So you can think of a zero draft as maybe the first note cards that you write with a piece of dialogue, a bit of scene. Maybe you're driving down the road to the grocery store and you come to a stoplight and somebody in the car next to you does something funny or interesting and you think, ooh, hey, if my character did that, then I could use that for this. And you'd write it down, jot it down somewhere, preferably on a note card that goes in your Zettelkasten. So once you have collected these little things that may inform a character, something about their emotions, something about what they look like, any of those little bits and pieces that it's like piecing a quilt or a collage. You're putting these little things together in order to build that world in your head. Well, once you have enough of those little things, you're going to have the urge to write. Now, for my pantsers, my writers that write by the seat of their pants, you may sit down very early on in your process and just start drafting things out. You're going to sit down with your notebook or with your computer, and you're just going to, get 500 words on the page. For my plotters, you might start with an outline. So your zero draft is going to look very different. It's going to be plotting out, okay, this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, and then maybe this could happen. And once you can see that progression of the story skeleton, then you're going to start writing those scenes. That would be your zero draft. So on one side, it's free form, it's more creative, more freestyle, maybe stream of consciousness writing. And on the other side, if you're a plotter, it's going to be much more methodical and laid out so that you have signposts that you can write from and to get the scenes and the chapters done. The thing is, all of that is a zero draft. It's just those early attempts at lining out that story for yourself, whether it's all done in narrative and prose, it's all done in dialogue, it's all done just as a plot outline, whatever that looks like. But the important thing is this: before you start working on the finished work in progress, like you've got it all lined out, you know what it's all going to look like, and you get it to a point where you feel like this feels like a full finished draft, you've got to start at zero. You have to start somewhere. So if you're thinking about an idea for a story, become a student of story. Read lots of books in your genre. Even if you're just reading microfiction, you don't have to read 50 novels. You could read 25 short stories in your genre and just get a feel for how people are doing it. That's going to be a data point that's going to stick back in your mind so that when you start working on your early attempts, your zero drafts, you kind of know what the genre expects from you. That's going to help give you your voice. So once you become a student of story and you start developing what your voice sounds like, because you know this world, you've got it in your head, you're ready to start writing about it, then you simply start getting those words on the page. It doesn't have to be in any fancy format, just get it on the page, because then you've got something to work with. And after you get 6 or 10 or 20 of these little pieces onto the page, then you can look at that zero draft and say, okay, this piece is working, this one is not, this one's out of here. This and this is working, this one, not so much. That's out of here. That's how you build your story, using each of those component parts. So Kathleen is going to talk about a very interesting group of character traits today. As she is, I want you to think about character traits as a piece, a critical component of zero drafting. Because if you don't understand what's going on inside your character, what their backstory is, why they approach things the way that they do, those are all components of character trait. If you don't have a firm grip on that, that may be one reason why you're feeling stuck or like you can't get the story written because you haven't gone deep enough into that character. Conversely, it may be a world building problem. You might know that the skies are green and that there's 3 suns, but if you don't know what the situation is with the characters involved, homework to do. So that's a high level look at how the zero draft gives you the foundation upon which you can build the rest of the story and keep that narrative going through to the end. Is it always a straight line? Absolutely not. It's a lot of circles, but that's okay. That's part of the process. Trust the process and trust that when you get enough finished, you'll be able to go back and put those pieces together like a puzzle the way they should be. So good luck zero drafting. Drop us a comment if you have questions because we love to hear from you guys. And I will throw it back to Kathleen to take us into the character traits.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. What an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed that, and I can't wait to see how that's going to play out in the story that I'm writing, because I still have some pieces and parts to put together. Well, my section today is about the group of character traits that's called the honor group. What makes the honor group a special group and cohesive is that it's what happens when your character is in an asymmetrical relationship of power, where your character is in the inferior position. They are faced with either a very personal power, where the holder of the power either knows them or has direct contact with them. That's the obedience group. Or where the power as a whole is an entity, maybe a great corporation. Typically, we think of a country because we call it patriotism, but it applies whenever there is a force that holds the power over the individual. Now, we have an interesting play that automatically goes on with these asymmetrical relationships. And that is a question that you have to weave into your story if you're going to use these. Is the power worthy of its power? Is the individual, your character, is called upon to obey, worthy of obedience? We structure them in definition as though the one in power or the entity in power is indeed worthy of obedience. And so we tend to say that the positive dimension is to be obedient because the obedience is a just response to a rightful authority behaving rightfully. But boy, oh boy, once you mix things in with story, you have got a lot of play there, because you have to decide whether, if you have a character engaged in disobedience, is that for a higher cause? Is it justified? Ooh, you get to play with a lot of questions that are very, very molten almost. You get to sculpt the whole dynamic range. And this also proves true whether your character is being a supportive member of a larger organization, or whether your character is maybe a whistleblower against some bad behavior that he's discovered in that organization. And maybe the right thing to do is to not give it the loyalty, the patriotism that would we do it if it were behaving in a moral fashion. Again, that's a lot of capability that you have there. I mean, when you're talking about things like loyalty and things like personal character traits, honesty, some of these other character traits, it's very I won't say cut and dry, but it's, you don't have the problem with where's the compass needle. You know where the needle is. You know what true north is. Is your character living up to that or not? Well, when it comes to these asymmetrical relationships, everything starts moving, and you have in your hands both the ability to set the compass needle and then to set your character's motivations with respect to that compass needle. So you have to think deeply about it. There's the simple cases of your character gets pulled over by a police officer. Okay, that's a simple question. Is he going to obey the officer when he says, get out of the car? But what if the officer says, put your hands behind your back, and he knows he didn't do a thing wrong, not even go through a traffic light? Oh, now what? So you see, it's all up for grabs with these two character traits. The power is in your hands, and you need to, if you want to use these, you get to play with some really, really deep issues that can merge into psychology, sociology, of the political arena, espionage, all types of intriguing convolutions become open to you. And when these character traits start taking a big role in any of your characters in the story, be it the main character or side characters. So play with them. Come on over to LiLLiPub to ask your questions or drop your questions in the comment section below, and we'll talk about that through the week. So Victoria, how would you like to close this for us?
Good stuff. Such good stuff. The only thing that I would add for our listeners is don't be afraid to play with these things. This is something that as a newer writer, sometimes you kind of think you're writing like it's gold. You can't play with it. You can't change it. I would argue the exact opposite. Toggle those things around. If my character does this, then it's either going to result in that or it's going to result in that. Which thing? Write them both, because you gain more knowledge as you play with these things. If the obedience goes this direction, it's one thing. If it goes that direction, it's another. Allow yourself to play with those and write those things out. And then, like I said before, this one's working, it stays. This one's not working, it's out of here. It goes in the drafts pile. So don't be afraid to play with your characters, because they will constantly surprise you. They will do things you never expected. Other people will show up. You never know what's going to happen. So lean into that so that you can write your best story. And like Kathleen said, if you need us, you know where to find us over in LiLLiPub.org.
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, LiLLiPub.org. That's where we gather each week to discuss our writing, share our stories. Come on over. We have a gathering every Saturday where you have the opportunity to submit part of your writing for discussion and workshopping. People are very kind, and it's a very safe environment. You will enjoy yourself if you come on by there. So I hope to see you over in LiLLiPub. If you have any specific questions, come, as Victoria said, comment, and we'll answer them right here in the comments. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.